All righty, fellas. We're going to break down another Superflex Dynasty startup mock draft. This time, we are going to do third round reversal for all these sick, twisted degenerates out there that enjoy this format. We did one without third round reversal last time. We got a question from Johnny B already in the chat saying kickers as rookies. No, it's way too hard to track when it comes to us doing a live stream. Very soon, we will have a mock draft simulator at points on Flock that will have kickers or rookie picks in there directly to be drafted. That is coming very soon. But for now, we're just gonna draft the veterans here,
which I can't wait for. By the way, it's going to be the most intuitive when it comes to mock drafting this offseason, man. Because I mean, just being able to draft the rookies right away, and obviously the aesthetic of the site, man, like you can't beat it. I understand, like obviously, the kickers that we've done in the past does accomplish a certain thing, but at the same time, especially for people that are maybe not accustomed to kickers being rookie picks, it kind of throws them for a loop.
Yeah, and as you guys can see there, we do still have 4 slots available. I will drop the link one more time in the live chat. If you guys want to join the draft, you can of course join it. All we ask, obviously, is that you take it seriously and you actually make accurate picks here and don't get fired and auto draft your team. But we will start as soon as we have these 4 slots filled out. So we had a couple newsworthy things that I wouldn't mind talking about. First of all, I'm starting on the back end to build out our draft class databases so that we can compare these prospects to each other and whatnot. Looks like the draft is full now. We did get a big declaration yesterday. Trevor Etienne is coming out, leaving Georgia. And we do have a wait and see on Quinshon Judkins as well. And Travion Henderson for that matter. But I think it's more likely that Henderson comes out than not.
Isn't Travion Henderson in his final year anyways?
He's a senior, but he has another year of eligibility. He could go back for a redshirt year if he wanted to. But there's speculation that Judkins might stay back for a year if Henderson comes out.
Yeah, no, fair. I guess like it's the NIL era. That's kind of what the basis is now. I mean, we literally just saw Singleton and Katron both go back for Penn State. Any team that is in the mix for a national championship, we're going to start to see them throwing bags to keep some of their top prospects.
Yeah, especially when, maybe Judkins wins a natty and he comes out for that reason. But if they lose the national championship, it's possible that he wants to go back, try and run it back, try and win, that kind of thing. So I'm going to randomize the draft order here again. You guys can see the startup league settings there. Dynasty Startup, Superflex, half tight end premium, full PPR, third round reversal, number of roster settings, just like a bog standard 3 wide receiver, 2 flex kind of Superflex league. But randomize the draft order. I am at 103. It looks like Danny is in the middle of the draft board there at the 106. Let's get this thing going. And again, make sure you do not get fired. I'm going to move the draft clock quickly to 60 seconds instead of 30 seconds for the time being. But I'll probably come around 9 or something, move it to 30 seconds.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And the roster settings here are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, 1 super flex, 1 tight end spot. And then we're going to go 13 rounds deep here. So we'll draft a couple bench players as well. Josh Allen goes 101. Not a surprise there.
Yeah, least surprising thing that I've seen.
Yep. Kind of don't mind Judkins staying. I mean, giving some credence to the 2026 class doesn't honestly hurt a little bit because right now we got some quarterbacks we're maybe excited about for 26. Is there a wide receiver we're excited about in 26 right now?
26. I know Carnell Tate's obviously been getting some buzz. Maybe like with like Buka going back, he could have a big year in his 3rd year. But like, there's no that's the Jeremiah Smith year. That's the Ryan Williams year. There's a lot more unproven in the 2026 class, and I would say that holistically right now because going into the 2025 class this time last year, we kind of already knew a ton of names. This year, it almost feels like in 2026, people almost anticipate it to be more of a 2022 type of year.
Yeah, there's a lot of 27 wide receivers. Yeah, there is a lot of 27 wide receivers. Danny, you are on the clock, by the way. I got Lamar there at the 103. We saw Chase going up the top here. I'll probably, we're not going to answer every comment, unfortunately, but I do see some interesting ones that I think make for good talking points.
Yep, for sure.
Andrew says, if the Penix Atlanta Falcons sort of pick were to happen in this draft, what team would draft a rookie at a position that they don't need to fill? I think that's an interesting topic. I'll let you make your pick first, though.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Okay. Let me, I went wide receiver early last time. Let me go with Drake May this time just to spice it up.
Yeah. So what do you think? Let's say early in the draft, there's a team that doesn't need X position. Who do you think could throw a wrench into the, position group? And to me, the names that stick out are somebody takes McMillan that doesn't need him, or somebody takes Genty that doesn't need him.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, one of my favorite early predictions, number 6 overall, Ashton Genty to the Raiders.
Yeah. So let me float this one by you. What if instead of taking a quarterback, the Cleveland Browns take Ashton Genty at number
See,
2?
if they don't go with the quarterback, I think it's got Abdul Carter signed, sealed, and delivered to the Browns.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely possible. I could see New England even potentially taking him too. It's not that these teams should take Ashton Genty for what it's worth. I just think Genty will be probably the number 1, 2, or 3 prospect on every team's board in the NFL. So if Abdul Carter is gone for a team, or their OT1 is gone for a team, they don't need a quarterback, they don't have Ted McMillan on the board to draft, they don't have Travis Hunter on the board to draft, for example, they might go and just be like, yeah, you know what? Genty's our number 3 rated player. The Las Vegas Raiders at 6, or the Jacksonville Jaguars at 5, potentially. They could nuke ETN and Bigsby with that pick. They're like, yeah, Genty was our number 2 player on our board, and Abdul Carter is our number 1 guy, and he's not here, so we're going to take Genty. It's like, it wouldn't shock me if a team did that, especially if they still have Trent Baalke running the show.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a couple down here that look pretty interesting. Caleb versus Drake going forward. I had them as very comparable prospects. You did as well. I believe them within 1 grading point on my scale. I do think from what we saw both in their respective rookie seasons, there's a lot more that I take away from Drake's play versus what Caleb saw. Again, I'm not saying Caleb had an objectively bad rookie year. Like, some people have gone out there and said, oh, Caleb, big disappointment. It's like, he had a fine rookie season. Obviously, again, he didn't go out there and be a complete world beater like maybe there was a type of expectation given his prospect status. But at the same time, I mean, he started taking care of the football a lot better the second portion of the year. Obviously, we saw that natural playmaking ability, and we're probably getting a head coaching hire. Even if it's Mike McCarthy for a young quarterback, I feel like that's going to be a good spot for him to develop, especially in comparison to Eberflus. Again, I'm not saying Mike McCarthy is going to help him win a Super Bowl, but for fantasy prospect, or from a fantasy perspective, I think Mike McCarthy is a fine coach for a young quarterback like that. Whereas with Drake May, if that situation gets better, we have already seen him produce top 12 level quarterback numbers per game. That's basically what he was in fantasy, top 12 level quarterback per game this year when he took over. We're potentially getting a big wide receiver 1 uptick this offseason. They have the most cap space in the league. I understand, again, maybe some of the allure of the situation has gone down because it's Mike Vrabel, not like a Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen being their head coach. But at the same time, you get a trusted offensive mind to run that offense. You draft a receiver or a highly decorated offensive lineman at number 4. And then all of a sudden, I mean, Drake May showed that natural playmaking ability and that natural arm talent that he was able to display last year, throwing to Demario Douglas, throwing to Kayshon Boutte, throwing to Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry was the most established target that they had in their offense. I personally think that Drake May's on the trajectory to be a top 5 level quarterback.
Yeah, no, I don't really disagree with anything. I'm a little bit more hesitant to just say that the Patriots are going to get everything right. Like, I think you're kind of trusting that they will kind of figure things out, get a receiver, get some offensive line help, so on and so forth. I don't value Drake May quite as high as you do. Like, I wouldn't have taken him 106 there, but I do have him kind of in the middle to the late end of the first round because of what he represents. I think a lot of people are really concerned too, like, oh, it's going to be run heavy offense or whatever. It's like, so Drake can run the ball too.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, again, like, I personally have the receivers ranked a little bit higher. I'll go with Puka Nacua here. I personally do have the 2 receivers with Jefferson and Lamb ranked a little bit higher, but taking Drake May here, I wanted to spark some conversation. He is my 7th overall player. And again, I understand it is projection, but at the same time, when you got a 22-year-old quarterback that was a quarterback 1 in points per game with the worst offensive situation in the league, I think we can only go up from here.
Yeah, I think that's the important part, is like what he did with nothing speaks a lot to what he could do, even if the situation is only 30% better. Like, let's say all Drake May gets next year is a good number 1 receiver. They kind of whiff on some offensive line additions, blah, blah, blah. It's just an upgrade at number 1 wide receiver. He's going to be better than he was this year. You know what I mean? Like, but if they do hit on a couple of things, maybe they find a good franchise tackle, they find, number 1 receiver, maybe a number 3 receiver, maybe a tight end upgrade, whatever the case is, that's how you compound yourself into just, really, really taking a step forward as a player. So I'm on the board here. It could go in a number of different directions. Bijan and Gibbs are off the board. Again, Genty would probably be around this range if we were drafting rookies, but he's obviously not in this range because we're not drafting rookies. I think I might go double quarterback. I actually don't really love the idea of taking, let's say, Drake London, who would be my next rated wide receiver. I think I'm going to go with either Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, or Caleb Williams. Honestly, I think I'm going to go, because I have Lamar. He's more of a competitive quarterback. I want to get another quarterback that can run. Well, give me Kyler Murray here over Love and Caleb and some of the other quarterbacks in that range.
For sure. And Piona, in most league markets, I would agree that for the most part, Joe Burrow will be ranked higher in a lot of those league markets. However, I do think when you pose the question of, for example, in startups that we're going to be doing, people are going to be aware of Drake May. Now, in a lot of your startups, maybe Drake May is more of a third round startup pick, late second round startup pick. That's going to happen in a lot of leagues that aren't quite as caught into what exactly Drake May represents. But for us personally, again, top 8 level pick, maybe you can argue that at 6, it was a tad early. But again, I wanted to showcase this draft based off of building on a young quarterback early.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys can see there the third round reversal if you're unfamiliar with it. Normally, Sir King Jared would pick 301 in a regular draft, but third round reversal in an effort to balance out the fact that he got Josh Allen at 101. Goes back at the end of the third or the end of the second round. You start the 301 from the 112 spot. So it's a format that became pretty popular a couple of years back, and Danny's a huge fan of it. I think it's kind of socialist, but it's fine.
The thing is, the 101 is just so much more valuable than the 112.
I don't disagree, but it makes me less excited about pulling a 101 when I'm getting.
I mean, sure, but
the startup draft. That's why I don't like it. It's not because I don't think it's fair. I think it is. I just prefer when I'm doing a startup and I'm like, oh man, I just got the 101. It's like less exciting in a third round reversal.
I would agree, but I also think because Dynasty is such a long-term game that, like, realistically, especially for our leagues personally, like, we're going on 5+ years, 7+ years, 10+ years is what we're hoping for at this point. Because it's such a long-term investment, basically shaping how the league could unfold based off of one luck of the draw. Like, I'm in redraft leagues, I'm never going to advocate for first round reversal. It's like skill diff, bro. Like, you pick 12, deal with it. Because it's a redraft league. It's 1 year. Go draft better at that draft spot. There's a lot more micro analysis, but specifically when you're dealing with Dynasty, because every pick is going to be on the block, every pick has a certain market value. I do think handing the 101 team also having that 301 in the order just gives them so much more of a value difference.
The only thing I would argue against it is, to me, it's actually the argument you make is more valid in redraft because you can't trade up to the pick, at least in Dynasty startups. If you want Josh Allen, you can go get him.
Yeah, pinged it for real. When I be shooting on 90 ping versus the guy I'm shooting against is on 20, there's a difference,
Yeah, Danny's making COD references. Also, this is a fun conversation too. Andrew says, what are the nuts landing spots for the top 4 to 6 guys this year? So if we look at the top of the draft board, let's talk about the quarterbacks' nuts landing spots. I mean, more than likely, Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants
have to be up there, right?
Raiders, the Jets, the Saints. Some of these teams are going to be in the quarterback market. Which team is the best landing spot of those?
In terms of the quarter, I personally like the New York Giants spot personally.
Yeah, so when you think about, like, in totality, what matters for a young quarterback, especially, like, given the quarterbacks that we have in this class, they have obviously certain strengths, certain weaknesses that make them a better fit for other landing spots than others. And I think specifically with Shadur Sanders, I know he's not going to want to go here, but I actually think Cleveland is his best landing spot if he were to get drafted by the Browns, because he's a in-structure quarterback. He struggled to hold the ball too long in college. He's got a much better offensive line in Cleveland than he ever played with in college. Kevin Stefanski can keep him kind of reined in and playing within the structure of the offense. Again, I don't think Dion's going to want him to go to that factory of sadness that can't, seem to figure out the quarterback position, even when they dump a Brinks truck on a formerly elite quarterback. But I actually think the Cleveland Browns are a half decent landing spot for a quarterback. I'm not sure they're going to take one at 2. They could opt to take one on day 2 and, sign. I saw a couple people are doing, like, quarterback carousel predictions and stuff. And some people seem to think that, like, getting Kirk Cousins on a cheap deal would make some sense for Cleveland, because he's played with Stefanski, obviously, and you could then draft a day 2 quarterback or something like that. For me, I'm like, I look at the Cleveland Browns, I'm like, dude, if you have a quarterback you think is a dude, like if you think Sanders is a dude or Cam Ward's a dude or whatever, like just take him at 2. Like that's what you should be doing. You should swing on the quarterback position until you hit one.
Yeah, no, 100%. Where would you guys put the top few rookie picks in a startup in terms of where they would be in a startup? So if we're just looking at it through relatively speaking, so right after Brock Bowers goes, I think you can make the case that Genty should be right around there. If we're talking about, like, again, him versus Bijan would be a real conversation for me at RB1. So if that's the case, we see Bijan going at the 205. I mean, personally, I think Malik Neighbors went a little bit too low. Maybe Bo Nix a little too high here. CJ Stroud a little too high for me. So if you were to rearrange it, probably within the first 16 or 17 picks of your draft is where 101 should find its way. 102, when we're talking about Ted McMillan, honestly, you can even make the case as soon as Nico's off the board. I would personally still take Drake London over him, but at the same time, if Ted McMillan gets top 5 overall draft capital, lands in a situation he can command early volume, I think you can make the case that right after Drake London goes off the board, he'd probably find his way with, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ladd McConkey, AJ Brown, those type of wide receivers. So if I had to guess right now, probably like a mid-third where Ted finds his way.
I personally think now where we're picking is about the range that I would rank Ted. Like I would prefer Harrison and AJ Brown still, and McConkey, but that all is going to depend once I run him through the model and watch his tape and whatnot. Speaking of Andrew's question where he said, what are the nuts landing spots for the top 4 to 6 guys list this year? I think we can both agree that the nuts landing spot for Ted McMillan is New England, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that like makes sense, again, not a good landing spot for what we would want, but one that I haven't really seen being talked about a lot. Could you totally see him going 9th overall to the Saints?
I could see it, but I don't know if he's going to fall that far.
Fair. Yeah, because I'm thinking with New England, because do they take him over Abdul Carter / Travis Hunter, assuming that 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they would. Like, they're probably, I mean, wide receiver is a highly valued position also, but like they'd probably opt for, one of those, foundational trench positions, especially, you got Vrabel saying the quotes were surfacing yesterday about like, teams are like 255-2 when they run the ball 40 times in a game or whatever. It's like, we know the type of coach that Mike Vrabel is. He might opt for the trench player, but we also know that Mike Vrabel was outraged when they traded AJ Brown, and he knows what it means to have a number 1 guy. So, I'm back on the board here. I thought Breece Hall was just such a screaming value where I picked him, so that's why I went with him there.
I almost went with him over Marv, but because I have a young team, I wanted to stick to the young theme here with May, Niku, and Marv.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go on a rant for a second because a lot of people disliked my take on this player in my Dynasty Trade Targets video. So here is the sole reason why Zay Flowers to me is worth this pick, and Zay Flowers is a buy in Dynasty right now. Zay Flowers had a top 24 season when healthy on the field this year in PPR points per game with Lamar Jackson as a second-year player, and he is tethered to this guy for the foreseeable future. And many smart football people that I trust, when they watch the film on this dude, when they, like Matt Harmon, for example, thought he was the best receiver in the 2023 receiving class after his rookie season. I remember going into the year, he's like, I would rank him Dynasty wide receiver 1 over Addison, over JSN, over even Puka Nacua. He thought he was a better receiver than Puka Nacua. Steve Smith, of course, huge fan of Zay Flowers and what he does for that offense. So I have a hyper-talented player who's entering his 3rd NFL season attached to Lamar Jackson, potentially, when all is said and done, one of the best quarterbacks maybe ever. Like, is Lamar Jackson going to go down as an all-time great potentially? Like,
probably.
He's still going to have another 5-10 years of prime here, at least. Maybe you think because he's a running quarterback, it's only 5 years. Whatever, dude. Zay Flowers is tethered to this situation, and he's only getting better and better and better. And then we've seen stretches of games where he's going off every single week. I don't know, dude. People seem to be overthinking Zay Flowers, in my opinion. I think he's very clearly like a top 15 to 18 dynasty receiver. It's like, does he have the same ceiling as Nico Collins? No. But he's definitely the type of guy that can command 110 receptions in a season where he takes another step forward. And I do think over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to get a blow up wide receiver 1 performance from him.
Yeah, I don't have him quite that high.
A lot of people seem to disagree with me. That's totally fine with me. I just look at it, especially from a ranges of outcomes standpoint. How tight of a range of outcomes does Zay Flowers have? Like, to me, it seems very, very cut and dry that he's going to hold his value. He's going to gain value if he continues to produce, and he's going to be untouchable on the market if Lamar continues to play like this too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He just doesn't have a lot of touchdown equity in a year that Lamar threw 41 touchdowns. He
Got
hasn't put up
unlucky with touchdowns this
well,
year is also my opinion on it.
see, I don't think he's a big goal line usage guy. Like we've seen Mark
No, but
Andrews
he is
be
a
their
big play
go-to,
guy.
likely their go-to. Sure, but at the same time, it's like for me personally, 9 touchdowns in the first 2 years when you have Lamar Jackson winning probably what's going to end up being back-to-back MVPs. What exactly is the ceiling from a volume standpoint?
The ceiling is that he was a second-year receiver and he continues to get better.
I mean, sure, but at the same time, we got to think about the context of that offense.
I can think about the context of that offense, and they've also run extremely run heavy the last 2 years as well. And there's a chance that if the defense plays poorly for stretches like it did at the beginning of this year, that they could throw the ball more. Like I'm
maybe, but
I'm not going to
we've
argue
never seen them being a high
Zay Flowers.
We
I'm
haven't
not going to do it. I have a young, very talented receiver.
We haven't seen the Ravens be a high octane passing volume offense throughout Lamar's tenure, and he's won 3 MVPs. What works for them is what's going to continue working.
They did in 2022. They threw over 600 times.
Yeah, I mean, that's 1 year in 8 years Lamar's been the quarterback there?
No, of course. But I'm saying what happens if they have a bad defense, they throw 575 pass attempts next year, and Zay, as a third-year receiver, takes another step forward, has 120 receptions and 1,400 yards. Like, to me, that's very much in the range of outcomes. I think he's that good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, agree to disagree. I'm just not really at that level. I think he's a fine, wide receiver 2-3 archetype, which is why, I still have him as my wide receiver 19 in Dynasty. I think there is a cap ceiling here personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with anybody if they said, he's probably never going to finish as a top 8 fantasy receiver on any given season, but I think he'd be hard pressed to have him finish outside 10 to 24. Like, I don't think he's that much different from like what we were projecting out of Chris Olave going into last year. And Chris Olave was tethered to Derek Carr and not to Lamar Jackson.
It's not about being out on Flowers. It's about recognizing that I don't think he has a top 8 overall seasonal ceiling. Personally, I think he's more.
I think you can still rank him high, even admitting that. That's my point.
I mean, he's wide receiver 19. It's not like I have him tanked in like wide receiver 26. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's where I'm at with Flowers too.
I think he's similar to Devontae Smith in that aspect, except I personally prefer Devontae Smith.
Yeah, exactly. I tend to think that these players, Flowers, Smith, Addison, guys that were like, we can objectively look at them and be like, there's a capped ceiling here for whatever reason or another. Maybe it's pass volume, maybe it's the quarterback they play with, maybe it's, the fact that they have a number 1 receiver ahead of them on the depth chart or whatever. I'm just not going to be out on these guys because of that reason. Because I think the tight range of outcomes and hitting on your picks in a startup is more important than hypothetically getting a guy who can turn into the next Nico Collins. Because, yes, that would obviously be everybody's preference if they had a pick of a receiver. You'd rather have a guy that can become a top 10 dynasty receiver than not. But the reality is they're hard to predict. They often swing and miss more often than we hit on them. And just give me a guy who's tethered to an elite quarterback who's a great player.
For sure. By the way, we're seeing the quarterbacks fall a lot more than we did in the other mock that we did. So that's nice.
Yeah, we are seeing that as well. Arthur asked a great question too. He said, which wide receiver is most likely to jump into the elite tier? I mean, the easy answer is Tet McMillan, probably.
Yes.
But let's say a guy outside of when you're starting to talk about the Flowers range, who's a guy that could, here goes Stack, LOL. What guy do you think is maybe a wide receiver 2 right now or a wide receiver 3 right now that could enter that territory?
Okay, so let's just say, you have to shout Garrett Wilson. It kind of
let's
feels
say
like
after Wilson, because I think that's probably a territory that people would recognize he could enter that tier.
Lab McConkey, he's the easy one.
He's also in the same tier as Wilson for me.
So what tier are we thinking? Are we like
Flowers, Smith?
Okay, so
Dunze, those type of guys.
So right after JSN is basically what you're pointing. Okay, yeah. So out of these guys, to me, the 2 obvious shouts based off situation, based off perceived talent level. Again, me personally, I do like both their talents, and based off their potential upside to grow in year 2. Rome Odunze has to be one. The prospect profile, which is too good, top 10 overall pick. They get some structure in terms of their offensive play caller next year, whether it's a Mike McCarthy, whether that it's another offensively minded coach. I do think that's going to help Rome Odunze a ton to potentially bounce back in year 2, hence why I took him at the 4-6. The other one, actually, funny enough, almost fell back to my 5th round pick, It's your guy. I mean, I think Xavier Worthy has a ton of upside in that situation. We've seen
Rice
once
too,
Marquise
people are saying in the chat.
Rashid Rice. I mean, that's the obvious one. Again, there is some question marks in terms of the injury, in terms of how long the suspension is. I do see a shout from Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams is a good shout. Now, I do think the market will cap his overall ceiling because Amon-Ra is there. But I do think Jameson Williams, from a talent perspective, with what he was able to do, I mean, how many exact targets did he command this year? And he had almost 1,100 receiving yards. Like, he was wildly efficient.
He was. And I mean, I'll be the first to say I was definitely wrong on Jameson Williams going into the
91
year.
targets, over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, that's really, really efficient on your volume. And for what it's worth, I thankfully walked back some of my comments and some of my exposures on Jameson Williams before the season started and the drumbeat got louder and louder. Because at first I was like, in May, June, if you asked me, is Jameson Williams going to break out this year? I'd be like, no, absolutely the fuck not. He's not going to break out. But by the time August 15th rolled around, I was like, he maybe could make me look stupid here. So
boys, London and BTJ a little too high end in this.
Yeah, we're talking deeper names. I actually think the guy that I just selected is also a half decent show because we were valuing him as a top 10 receiver going into the year. And outside of concussions, really, and bad quarterback play with Derek Carr, what has really changed about Chris Olave's projection? Because Chris Olave going into the year was, 25, 30% target share commanding wide receiver. Obviously, the concussions may be a bit of an issue, which should naturally, bring down his value a little bit. But would it shock me if next year Chris Olave has 1,300 yards and 7 receiving touchdowns, finishes as wide receiver 9 in points per game, and he's still just 24, 25 years old? Like, that wouldn't shock me.
And Bird and /Buka, obviously.
Any rookie is probably the easy answer to this question, too. Like, the top rookies in any class. And I was hoping Pickens fell back to me because I also think Pickens is a half decent shout as well.
Pickens basically for the 205, and you swap him a 26th third for a fourth. Go get Pickens. That's a
go get deal. Pickens. Also a good answer to this question, by the way.
Yeah.
George Pickens could also hop his way into that top tier. If he stops being a complete and utter knucklehead, that would be great. But I think he proved, what were we most concerned about going with George Pickens going into the season?
His separation ability, and he got a lot better as a separator this year.
Not only that, but the other thing was we had never seen him command a full allotment of like number one receiver targets facing number one corners because Deontay Johnson, I know it feels like 6 years ago that Deontay Johnson played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it was last year that he played for the Steelers. So, the fact that Pickens was tasked with, you're the dude now. You got to face the number one corners. You got to be the target commander that, we didn't really know he could be because even going back to his days at Georgia, he played with Brock Bowers, he played with Ladd McConkey, he played with Adonai Mitchell. We never saw him really command a huge target share in college or in the NFL, but he did take that step forward this year. So good to note with him. I'm looking at a couple different options here. I do think Kenneth Walker is kind of interesting because I built out kind of a competitive team here with Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Breece Hall. I could go with a guy like Kenneth Walker. I might see what I can get with my next selection at the wide receiver position. I also think Jaden Reed has a chance to really climb up the board.
He's such an interesting one for me because I think the talent is there, but the week-to-week consistency I don't know what happened in the second half of the year. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I think Hawkinson is also maybe a decent, probably a decent value at this point. We are doing a half tight end premium draft here, and I think Hawkinson probably belongs to go off the board. But from my experience, you guys don't love tight ends, so I'm gonna fade tight end once again, and probably 6 of them are gonna go with the next couple of picks. But I do think Hawkinson probably would have been a worthwhile selection with that pick for me. I think Jaden Reed, call me crazy. I think Jaden Reed is still very good.
Yes, no, same for sure. So Baker not getting enough respect. I will definitely say, Dak and Mayfield being 5th round picks, if that's going to be the case throughout the summer, I'm going to have a ton of those guys in startup drafts. Because straight up, I mean, what has really changed from the projection of them both having quarterback 1 level seasons just because they're a little bit older? I understand, they're not going to be 1st round startup picks ever. I get that. But it doesn't feel like they're ever going to be 5th round startup picks again either.
Yeah, if Mayfield keeps Cohen especially, you could really, let's talk real for a second. Baker Mayfield at the 5'9" outscored the quarterback I selected at 210 in Kyler Murray. And not only that, I can argue with certainty that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers feel better about Baker Mayfield than the Arizona Cardinals feel about Kyler Murray from a long-term
100%.
perspective. Now, obviously, Kyler would definitely get a job somewhere else, and that's not really a concern.
Good value for Bryce too, by the way.
Yeah, I think the middle class of quarterbacks 2 years ago was what was Daniel Jones quarterback 15 after he got his big contract or something like that. We got this is the healthiest middle class in modern American history here that we got for this quarterback class from QB 13. Like, people got mad as shit at my Michael Penix take on the Dynasty Trade Targets video. And all I was suggesting really is that I don't think Michael Penix is better than a lot of the quarterbacks that go in this range, which to me is fair after 3 games and a guy that I felt shaky about as a prospect. Like, I know AJ's going to get mad already in the comments. We're not going to do this again, but like Lawrence, McCarthy, Purdy, Nix, Prescott, Mayfield, Bryce Young, Penix, Goff, all these guys, I cannot remember a time where the QB2s were this good.
Yeah. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's funny. At least I got to get my get back call and you biased this offseason or this.
Okay, so full disclosure,
I got my get back.
I don't feel like obviously, like if you
sounded like me, Corey.
Bucks game or something, that was a bad call. But like coming into the season, what Bucks take was I wrong on?
Corey, you're sounding like me right now. We're not doing this.
What Bucks take was I wrong on, though?
Dude, you said that they were the 3rd NFC contender literally 2 weeks before the playoffs.
I'm not talking about NFL stuff. Okay. That I was wrong on. I'm saying fantasy perspective. What was I wrong about coming into the year?
I mean, like, did you even have like strong takes on the Bucks?
I mean, I thought Godwin was a great value. He was one of my highest drafted players. Okay. He obviously had a great season before he got injured. I'm just saying,
you can't go on one hand and call me biased and then not take the brunt as well. I'm gonna feed you what you're feeding me sometimes, you know?
I was not okay. So the one thing I was wrong about was I was not as in on Bucky as I should have been, for sure. But yeah, like you want to say, real life NFL perspective, I was wrong about the Bucks. That's fine. That's just me being a fan. But like actual fantasy takes, like that's what Kat said. Kat said, I can't trust you on Bucks and whatever take. I mean, like fantasy stuff, I don't think I did like a too bad of a job on my own team.
Yeah, I mean, like
Cade Otton, I thought was a good late round tight end too. He had a good season.
We're usually fine when it comes to fantasy stuff. It's more so when it comes to like our own team, like. For example, me going into the playoffs last year, you going into the playoffs this year. We're just a couple of overconfident fellas.
Yeah. I mean, at least at one point in the season, my team had beaten the number 1 and number 2 seed in the NFC. Yeah. So at least I had a reason to think that we might have been the third best.
We beat Detroit too. We had a good team. We went 12-5.
Yeah. We beat Detroit in Detroit, Philly in Philly. So to me,
but you did lose to the Cowboys.
We did, but this was like mid-season when we still had Godwin, and the time that Katz is referring to and the time that you're referring to was right before the Ravens game. And going into that game, I don't think I was outrageous to say that we were a top NFC contender. We lost Godwin, we lost Evans in that game, and we got smoked by the Ravens. And I walked back my comments.
We'll see.
I don't know. Yeah, this was the take I was definitely wrong about. I thought Rashad would say the starting running back. That was definitely the take I was wrong about. Playoff best ball with the Bucks. I mean, Mike Evans and Bucky were great advance rate pieces. So, and I actually I had 14% of them. It's not like I was hammering the crap out of them.
I don't know who to take here.
I'll take some responsibility for the Bucks being. I thought they could go on a run, win a game or 2, maybe 3, but yeah, that didn't happen, obviously.
Sorry, I'm scouring the boards because the sleeper ADP is such a mess.
Yeah.
We want to go here.
I was really hoping Chase would fall back to me. I'm mad that you took him.
I'll go Josh Downs.
That's a great pick.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, guys. Ricky Pearsall going a full round before Josh Downs is egregiously bad.
Yeah.
Josh Downs is way better than Ricky Pearsall. I'm sorry. Ricky Pearsall, fun rookie season, nice week 17 game, couple flashes here and there. He's wide receiver 45 in Dynasty, realistically. He's not better than Josh Downs, who's a top 30 receiver.
Yeah, agreed. Jaden Daniels takes were bad. I mean, we'll be the first ones to admit that we were wrong on Jaden Daniels. We had valid concerns about his ability to sit in an NFL pocket and get through his options, because we saw multiple instances in the LSU tape. He'd go through his first read and he'd take off for a 50-yard scramble. And we literally pointed it out in that. If he can do that in the NFL, great. He's going to be a great fantasy quarterback. But at the same time, when NFL athleticism would meet him, is he able to get over the top? And we've seen that this year, that he's the player that he was on those high-end flashes of tape. and the concerns that we had, he was able to overcome. Now, again, for what it's worth, he was a 24-year-old rookie, whereas, Drake May, Caleb Williams were 21 years old. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to go out there and say he's anything but a top 3 startup pick. I think that would be foolish at this point.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, like the market had Jaden Daniels 102 or 103. We had him 103, 104, 105, depending on your quarterback need. Because I would have, like, for example, if I didn't need a quarterback, I would have taken Malik Neighbors over Jaden Daniels straight up. Maybe try to do my due diligence first, as we always talked about, but I would have done it if I had to. Drake May, I would have taken over Jaden Daniels straight up. And in fact, I traded Jaden Daniels in a second for Drake May. So yeah, I was wrong on that, but like Drake May's still a stud too. And he's still a mid to late first round startup pick.
Yeah. I mean, this is the other answer too. Like the answer, to put it simply, was draft them. That was
draft them both. And thankfully last year, because I felt like we were, wrong on Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud, obviously, for a calendar season. But now, like, it's getting closer.
If somebody told you that they prefer Young to Stroud in Dynasty, what scale of 1 to 10 would you call them crazy?
Like a 7. I still think it's pretty crazy to take him over Stroud, but I don't think it's outrageously stupid.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like,
crazy,
I think Stroud's the safer pick, but also it's like, I don't know. I mean, Stroud was better in their rookie seasons. Young was better in their second seasons. You can make the case that the Carolina situation is going to get a little bit better. Again, food for thought. Obviously, I do prefer Stroud because I do think there's a lot of context with how that situation unfolded in Houston. You're losing your two of your top 3 wide receivers. Nico also missed a significant amount of time. The offensive line couldn't block up front. But at the same time, I think we also got to give the credit to Bryce that he was dealing with a terrible situation since he got drafted, and he improved with it.
Yeah, this is an interesting question too. What quarterback is most likely to lose value, Arthur says. And to me, there's 2 very clear answers just based on this current board. Don't yell at me, but Jaden Daniels absolutely could lose some value if he were to get hurt.
I mean, he's a top 3 pick. Yeah.
He would not stay a top 3 pick, though, because the concern for him coming into the season and coming into the NFL was that he would run too much and get hurt. So if he were to suffer a major injury, it could definitely hurt his startup value. Obviously, if he stays on the field.
Is Bo Nix not just the clear other one?
That was what I was going to say. Because Bo Nix was not highly thought of as a prospect, if he had a sophomore slump similar to what we saw from CJ Stroud this year, I do think Bo Nix would probably fall to like a 4th round startup pick.
Yeah, and I don't think this is fair for him personally, but you already know what the comps are going to be. If he goes out there and has a poor second year again, I think this guy moves way better than this other guy. But people are going to say, well, this is Mac Jones all over again. And as soon as one person says this is Mac Jones all over again, if Bo Nix has a bad second year, his dynasty value is going to drop 3 or 4 rounds.
Yeah. I think it would take more than like people thinking he's Mac Jones. But like, yeah.
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying what the consensus might be at with it.
Okay. I don't know. Again, the ADP is bad right now. Damn it. Hubbard's gone already. I was hoping that I could find Hubbard on the board. I
was hoping he'd fall.
Oh God, what am I going to do at running back now? I should have just taken Walker or Chase Brown where I was picking, because I don't really love the rest of the running back board right now. Like, I'm not taking ETN here. Like, you kidding me?
You don't want your
I guess I could take Tracy. Fuck. I could take Tracy here. Fuck. I gotta like almost pull up my running back rankings because the friggin' ADP is so bad.
Oh, it's a mess, dude.
Idea.
Nah, Tracy's a fucking good find.
I mean, Tracy's probably the best running back on the board for me right now.
Probably, very comfortably.
Tracy, yeah, definitely the best running back on the board. So I'm going to roll Tracy here.
Yeah, damn it. Are really out on A-Rich and their Colts.
Welcome to the club. I'm not in on A-Rich.
Yeah, he's a tough one because
here's what I never want to hear all offseason. I never want to hear this coming to anybody's mouth, okay? Listen. Nobody ever better say that Josh Allen was not good in his first 2 years. And that's why
his second year was good.
His second year was good. And like, as I talked about in the trade target
on Jerry Jeudy,
as a second year quarterback, we were sure of one thing with Josh Allen. He loved football. He worked hard. His teammates loved him. We are not sure of any of those things with Anthony Richardson, in addition to him being extremely inaccurate and probably not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I got sniped on Jeudy. Now I'm rethinking where the heck I want to go with this, because I also got sniped on Tracy. Guys left me in quite the predicament. There's no clear obvious pick on the board right now, and the ADP is cooked. All right, let me lock in. Fucking fuck. Okay, fuck it. I just panicked.
Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the board is disgusting, and it's so hard to fucking sort through because it's not even caught up.
My thoughts on A-Rich are this. If you can get anywhere close to a first-round pick in a rookie draft, you get him the fuck off of your team as soon as you possibly can. To me, this is precisely what I was saying about Trey Lance after his second season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And Danny was still in on Trey Lance, and I was very much team Purdy.
They're different circumstances because we saw A-Rich crash and burn on the field. Lance got, 3 starts? And then he was just ass.
But the smoke was there for both guys that both franchises didn't seem to be happy with the player that they selected.
Yeah. Got him for 111 while he was benched. Talking about...
He traded 111 for Richardson, I think. Oh, sold him. He said sold him for 111 when he was benched.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's probably his price now, right? Give or take?
Yeah, about that. Also, damn, fucking Sutton was available. I would have taken him over Ridley for sure.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I'm still bitter.
I just have a wish for the NFL draft. Just a wish. I have a wish here. Good Lord, let's get Ted McMillan in Carolina if he doesn't go to New England.
Yeah.
Let's just get Bryson number 1, period. I don't care if it's McMillan. Like, McMillan goes to New England. He's not available. Take Burden at 8. I don't care. Burden's worth it.
Yeah.
Trade 8 for Wilson, Garrett Wilson on the Jets. Like, I don't care. Like, go get Bryce Young a number 1 receiver.
Trade down, get Igbuka.
Yeah, Igbuka would be a great fit too. I just think I think Bryce gets a number 1 and it's curtains. He's going to be a top 12 dynasty quarterback midway through his 3rd season.
You know, he could.
What do you think about Treylon Burks' future? I don't know. Can he operate a fryer?
Yeah, I mean,
he's going to be making French fries if he doesn't learn to stay on the field.
Yeah, I mean, is he good at taking orders?
Yeah, he needs to it's bad. Treylon Burks has been shit when he's been on the field, and most of the time he's not on the field. So,
wait, has he watched Karate Kid?
I have not watched it, so I don't know.
No. I'm talking about Treylon Burks. Has he watched Karate Kid? Because he's about to be busting down the tables. You know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
He's gonna be busting tables, right? Yes, and he stomps the grapes and shit or whatever too.
It makes me heartbroken you didn't get that.
108 for Wilson take. You should be a GM. LOL. They would probably get a plus on Wilson too. I can't tell if this is sarcasm or not. RK Schmidt fired. Would it actually even real talk? Like, how much does it cost for Garrett Wilson as a trade? Does it cost 108 for Carolina to trade him? Or
in
for
real life?
Trade him to Carolina?
In real life?
Yeah.
He ain't getting a top 15 pick.
You don't think they would get? Do you think it'd be Wilson and a 3 or something back?
Probably. He's due for a contract already. First and foremost, he's due for a contract, and again, he's been a good wide receiver. Are we sure he's a number 1? Also, what do you mean? What the fuck are you? What's that in reference to?
Your reference?
Busting tables. Wax on, wax off.
What are you smoking? He's not worth the 108. 2 first-round picks at minimum. I tend to agree, dude. I think Wilson is number 1.
You're crazy. 2 first-round picks? No, you're psychotic. No team's
He's not gonna fetch 2 first-round picks, but I think 108 should be enough to get him.
Like, we're talking NFL draft, by the way. In Dynasty, he's worth the 108. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Obviously, in Dynasty, it would be 2 first-round picks. We're talking the real NFL Carolina Panthers trade.
The real NFL is not giving the 8th overall pick for him. I can tell you that with certainty. It's just how the NFL operates. It's a cost business, and realistically, if the team can view that they can get similar production from Luther Burden, Ted McMillan, which should be available around the 8th overall pick, why would you trade the wide receiver that's due for a contract within the next couple of years? Especially when AJ Brown got the 20th overall pick for him.
Yeah, but he was also due a contract that year too.
Yeah,
they had to pay it. Like, Philly paid him instantly after he got traded.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where to go. I wasn't paying attention.
The Cardinals absolutely fleecing the Ravens absolutely fleecing the Cardinals for Marquise Brown's pretty funny to me. The Ravens got a 1 for Marquise Brown.
Yeah, that's
and a 3.
insane. Yeah, teams didn't even give 2 firsts for. I mean, to be fair, I think that was a little bit of a fugaz because it's like even though on face level he was available, I can bet you there's some collusion going behind the scenes in the NFL that the Ravens are like, yeah, if you go out and offer him this, it's going to ruin the market forever, and like teams just kind of abided.
Well, also, we don't know that they didn't offer that because the Ravens then had the chance to match that offer and send them 2 first-round picks and then sign him. So there's probably a reason that we never heard like, oh, they offered 2 first-round picks is because the Ravens were just going to be like, yeah, you guys might be offering that, but like we're just going to literally match you if that happens.
So that's probably what happened behind the scenes is the Ravens basically said, if one of you dumbasses actually try to make an offer, we will match anyways. Don't waste your time. And we can't set a precedent of players having this much control over their future. Like, collusion like that's happened behind the scenes in the NFL.
Yeah. I'm deciding which direction I want to go with this pick. I think very clearly Davante Adams is the best player on the board. So I'm going to take Davante Adams. I already built out a pretty competitive team here with the Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson pick, and got Adams there. I think that's great. Part of
Adams in the knife is really nice.
If you guys are in startups where people draft like we do, which is young players, draft picks, especially if we had rookie picks in this draft, you could bet your bottom dollar Davante Adams is probably like the fucking 1106 or something in that type of format. People be taking 204, 205, 206 over him by now if we were doing a draft with rookie picks. I really do think you can get away with going a little lighter at wide receiver than you've been able to in years past, knowing that you can get Godwin, Evans, Deebo Samuel, Davante Adams, Cooper Kupp, guys like that, Amari Cooper later on in the draft, which you've been able to do for years past, but normally that expensive production was more expensive.
Keep in mind too, we're doing these startups, like it'll feel gross, like, oh my God, yeah, Ridley in the 8th kind of feels a little early, but then when you contextualize that, by the time you get to the 8th round, there's going to be 12 rookies that are going to be off the board for the most part.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? Like, realistically, if you're thinking about it, worst case scenario, the 12th overall pick is still going to be a top 10 round startup pick. Like, even if they got the worst landing spot, they fell a little bit, maybe
100%,
maybe quarterbacks fell. So when you're contextualizing like just how beautiful the board is realistically, like with how many options that are available, kind of feels like there hasn't been this much depth in startups in a while. It almost feels like at this point.
Yeah, no, like here's a real question for you. Like the 111, 112 will likely be some combination of wide receiver 4, quarterback 3, tight end 1, maybe, or tight end 2, running back 5 or 6. Like we're talking like Travion Henderson or something, or like Quinshawn Judkins, or like Caleb Johnson, or like, dude, they're going to be top 18 dynasty running backs the second the NFL. Like, who would you rather have? RB5, RB6 in this class, or Josh Jacobs in a startup?
Yeah, I
mean, it's probably close, depending on the team build that you have.
It's very close. And also, I will point this out right now. This is a way too early take, so take it for what it is. But we're going to see the resurgence of the wide receiver position in best ball this year, particularly because there's so many good, cheap rookie options that you can get this year, to the point where, I mean, if we're looking at it, Genty's probably going to be a top 2 round pick. That's the only one that you're going to have to pay like up for. Omarion Hampton's probably going to be what, like a 4th round pick, maybe 5th round pick. Realistically,
yeah. If he goes to like the Chargers in the 1st round or something, he'll be like a 2nd round pick probably.
Caleb Johnson's probably going to be around that range, 4th to 6th round, depending where he goes. Travion Henderson's going to probably be just after those guys. I mean, you're going down the board. Dylan Sampson types are probably going to be late round picks, like 12th round picks, and be like your Tyrone Tracy maybe of this year. There's just so many options that you go throughout like the 4th round on of rookie running backs this year, to the point where I think this year, specifically in best ball, like obviously in managed leagues, you're going to have to play for upside. You're going to have to play for that workload. So drafting one early is going to be more palpable. But in best ball specifically, when you don't have to predict when the spike weeks are coming, there's just so many good, easy, projectable spike weeks for a bunch of late round backs this year because of the class that's coming in.
Yeah, I mean, you said that it was going to be a resurgence of wide receiver. I mean, I don't think wide receiver went anywhere.
No, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, because like obviously this was the year of the running back, and I feel like people are going to over adapt to it a little bit much.
Yeah,
and we're going to see all these running back values, specifically at the running back or at the rookies spot, really come onto the scene.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I've seen this take. I mean, I was very high on Jackson Dart going into the 2024 class. not the 2025 class, 2024 class, I had it Caleb Williams, Drake May, and unfortunately KJ Jefferson was my QB3. But then I thought Jackson Dart was right there with Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy and like the other quarterbacks. And he went back to school that year, obviously, had a great season this year. I think Jackson Dart is going to pick up a lot of steam as the offseason goes along. I also switched.
Did we change the pick? Oh, yeah. You did that right as I went to pick?
No, I did it at the beginning of the round.
Okay, well, I mean, sure.
There you go. But yeah, my thought process is this. These are the 5 quarterbacks that we got. We got declarations pretty much out of the way so far. We got Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, primarily thought of as the first round caliber quarterbacks. And then we got Jalen Milroe, wild card, athletic, so on and so forth. Quinn Ewers announced recently would be true, that he is going to be in the class as well from Texas. And Jackson Dart. Those are our first round and maybe first round upside quarterbacks.
I think the NFL is actually going to be the ones that are anti-Jackson Dart, and the fantasy community is going to be the one that's really in on him.
I tend to think the same because the metrics that he hits, the fact that he's young, the fact that he can run, the fact that he's got a big arm, that seems like more. I mean, NFL teams like traits, obviously, too, and that's why they drafted Will Levis as high. But like we were also higher on Levis than the NFL was, clearly. So it's going to be fun to see how this quarterback class shapes up because we're hearing pretty much any report you could possibly imagine about this quarterback class. We've heard Cam Ward's not worth a first round pick. We've heard that. He's the first overall lock. We've heard that. Like we've heard pretty much anything and everywhere that you could imagine. Jalen Milroe, first round prospect. We've heard it. Jalen Milroe, day 3 prospect. We've heard it. Like we've heard literally everything about a lot of these quarterbacks. And I think thankfully for Milroe, for Ewers, and for Dart, the time that they can shine most is when they're not playing college football games and they're throwing in shorts and t-shirts and they're doing drills because they all have tools.
Question I got for you. Do you think Will Levis is completely dead, or do you think he's going to get a bridge opportunity like a Sam Darnold type of resurgence?
I believe he will be the Titans' backup quarterback next year.
Next year, sure. I'm talking about like maybe even 3 years' time. Do you think Sam Darnold type of resurgence is possible for him?
I think it's possible. I think it's probably more likely that he's Drew Lock.
Yeah.
And like best case scenario, he gets like a high priority backup spot behind a shaky starter.
Like a Winston too.
Yeah, like I tend to think that Levis is probably cooked because I don't really believe in the dude. Yeah. That Jacoby Myers at 11-2 is an absurdly good value.
Yeah, I actually considered him where I took Warren, but I kind of didn't realize I was on 30 seconds.
Yeah. Also, what a world we live in. That Jalen Coker is a 10th round startup pick. We made.
I agree, Mason. I agree. For the record, I just wanted to pose the question because I do think there's ability there, but again, like it really just depends on the.
We're currently living in a world, by the way, where Zach Wilson might get a starting opportunity this offseason. Yeah. Like.
Yeah, Darnold's more naturally talented, but I also think natural talent isn't the reason why Will Levis is failing. I think it has everything to do with upstairs.
Yeah, which is, I mean, he could learn behind a veteran for a year or whatever. Like, it's all possible. Like, if you break down how many quarterbacks we have available in free agency in the draft and how many teams need quarterbacks, there's not enough people to fill these jobs. Like, Justin Fields might get a starting job. Jacoby Brissett might be a starting quarterback come week 1. Tyrod Taylor might be a starting quarterback come week 1. Like it's bad out there, guys. Like there's going to be a team. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a team that signs an old, dusty Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson type and pairs him with Zach Wilson for some upside. I guarantee it's going to happen.
Yeah, most likely.
The teams still think that Zach Wilson might be half decent. Like I know he's looked bad, but like a year backseat, learn from Bo Nix, how he does things. Bo Nix actually older than Zach Wilson, ironically. There's a lot of stuff going on there that could change.
For sure.
2 around 7 is absurd. I talked about it in the quarterback.
Show the entire board because Mason, we were actually talking about this earlier in the stream, but overall the quarterback values this year, particularly because people are wisening up to not just taking 11 in the first 12 picks. And again, part of it was like having the certainty of the quarterback, but people are starting to realize now, and specifically us too, like I'm not including us in that. Like pushing up the quarterback 2s up the board has kind of always been a thing that we've been doing that maybe we shouldn't. And we are starting to see people adapt to that this offseason, like just pushing them down a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is like the quarterback 2s that we have are better.
Yeah. Well, that too. It's like where you pointed out to like
Dak's a
Dak,
QB2 right now,
Mayfield,
like a mid QB2 in ADP.
which is insane.
But like that's the reality of where we're at. Like there's 22 to 24 really good quarterback options, and then everybody else stinks.
Yeah. Like we're seeing it on this board, like you said. Tua obviously in the 7th. I mean, Dak and Mayfield obviously going in the 5th. Bryce Young is a young quarterback, and we're talking about him potentially improving in his 2nd year, being a potential franchise guy going into his 3rd year. There was at one point, like for example, that was the same bet we made with Fields. That was the same bet we made with Trevor Lawrence in the 3rd round a couple years ago, but that was in the 3rd round. Being able to do that with Bryce in the 6th round, like we've never seen that type of opportunity cost being so low.
Yeah, right. Sam Darnold going as high as he went the year he went to Carolina was pretty insane.
Facts. Great Baker value. Yeah, no, Baker was definitely a really good value as well here.
I was saving Tank Bigsby way down in the ADP so that I could grab him there. I thought I talked about him as a potential sell high. Ironically, Danny, when I was looking through Keep Trade Cut and some of these places, the big like sell high candidates ended up being guys who are currently backup running backs who people think will work into workloads soon. It wasn't like years past who were the sell high running backs every year after the season was done. It was always Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. It was always guys like that every year, sell high running backs as soon as the season was done. This year, they're actually valued appropriately. People kind of understand it now. Well, the guys that are overvalued are Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, guys who aren't starters right now, but people are going to be like, okay, well, a year from now, 2 years from now, they will be starters, which is probably, possible. Only we got a heat seeker of a running back class coming in that could nuke these guys.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. Like it's similar to like I just took Rico Dowdle there at the 12-6. He's a free agent this year. He's coming off a 4.6 yards per carry, 1,000-yard rushing season. It's like usually in the past you would have to be paying an 8th round startup pick for that. The 12th round, I agree. 8th round too risky to take a profile like that. Once you get to the 12th round, you get a guy that's proven that he can rush for 1,000 yards in the league at an efficient rate. He's going to get an opportunity somewhere, even if it's as a 1B. And if you're telling me it's as a 1B or a 2A, like high value 2 in a good situation, like Rico Dowdle could very well be in, 12th round feels very reasonable for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't disagree on some of these guys. Again, the running back position right now, what I said in the trade targets video, I think is very accurate.
Yeah.
If you got running backs that are shaky, that could get nuked by a rookie or at least lose value by a rookie, you should probably be shopping them right now. And if you need running backs, your best bet is to buy rookie first, seconds, and thirds. And just like I have teams right now, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have teams right now, where you built up your quarterback position, you built up your wide receiver position, you built up your tight end position. And this might be the year where you're like, now I add my running backs. And guess what? You got a fucking great draft class to do it. And
100%.
You have the 101, the 106, the 109, the 110, the 203, 206, 209, like just fire as many picks at running back as you possibly could imagine, because there's a very good chance, unlike when was the last time we saw a draft class like this at running back where in the first 30 picks of dynasty rookie drafts, 15 of them are going to be running backs? When was the last time we saw a running back class this good?
We haven't. It's 2017. That would
like
be
since we've been making content, I can't imagine a class where running back was clearly the dominant position of the draft class that year. Most of the time, 2021, it was pretty balanced. We had 5 quarterbacks, we had wide receivers, we had a couple top running backs. 2022 was pretty much all wide receivers. We just had Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and a couple other guys. 2023, we thought it was going to be a great running back class. Didn't end up being as great, but it still was kind of decent for running backs. And then 2024 was just loaded with wide receivers, not very good at running backs. So this might be the first year we see like the board be very, very green in dynasty rookie drafts with running back talent here. Grab Romeo Dobbs. I think he's a half decent player. Yeah. People hate on Romeo Dobbs too much.
I mean, there's another factor there too. Christian Watson might miss a lot of next season with the compound.
Oh, absolutely. Injury. Yeah. I think that's true of all the Packers receivers, Wicks, Dobbs, and Reed.
Y'all think Travis Hunter going to play defense? I think we're going to know more by the time the NFL draft comes. But if I were to guess, he'd probably be a part-time offensive player, full-time defensive player, from what we know right now.
Let me ask you this question: we were asked the top prospects, what are the nutted landing spots for them? What is the nutted landing spot for Travis Hunter? Assuming, let's say, he wants to play offense 50 to 60% of the time, who is the coach that would know how to use him correctly?
coach that would know how to use him
So we
correctly.
got Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans could take him 101. We got Kevin Stefanski with Cleveland could take him 102. New York Giants, Brian Daboll could take him at 103. New England Patriots, whoever the offensive coordinator ends up being there. And then Jacksonville at 105, Las Vegas 106, New York Jets 107. There's no way he'd probably go lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very comparable offensive play calling situations. I don't really see a big schematic difference somewhere or the other. Like, some people might say, well, Brian Callahan, because obviously he came from the Bengals tree, but at the same time, he hasn't really proven it on his standalone. Like we saw this year, their offense was supposed to take a step up, and it just simply didn't. Now, you could point some blame to the offensive line. You could point some blame to Will Levis, but at the same time, it didn't really look like Brian Callahan was giving them advantageous situations. So I still think it's New England because, again, there is a little bit of an unknown of the offensive play calling situation. But what we do have from a known standpoint is when he is on the field, Drake May is going to be targeting Travis Hunter. And Drake May targets Travis Hunter.
There's no real target competition in that situation, right, which adds up. But I do think it will be important to understand schematically who's the best fit for Travis Hunter, more so than the bog standard, are there good receivers there already? Because that's what everyone's mind goes to when it comes to what's a good landing spot for this player? It's like, well, who is his quarterback and what other receivers does he have to compete with are the first two things that people think. Well, I'll add one caveat. It's got to be schematically thought of what's a good landing spot for him. And I do believe it's probably Cleveland as far as like a schematic and a creative play caller and stuff. But there are other receivers and talented pass catchers there.
Yeah.
And no quarterback currently.
I do have to reference one. I mean, they're still in the thick of it. I doubt that they're going to get him. Personally, I don't think it makes any sense for him to want to commit there, but we still have seen the rumblings of Ben Johnson to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if they do end up hiring him as the head coach, obviously that would then easily be the number one answer. Yes, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the one, but that might even be an advantageous for Travis Hunter because if he's only going to be playing 50 to 60% of the snaps, when he's on the field and you have a number one wide receiver to take attention of other defenses, that only opens up the space for Travis Hunter to be able to maneuver. And as we know with Travis Hunter, obviously he's got phenomenal ball skills, but what he does at such a special level is being able to diagnose and play in space. And we saw that, for example, you pointed out the Jaden Reed comp in terms of his open field ability. If he could be a more refined version of Jaden Reed, playing on those 50 to 60% of the snaps, Trevor Lawrence returns to form because he's healthy coming off of that shoulder injury. Brian Thomas Jr. maybe takes the next step. He was a near 1,300-yard, 10-touchdown receiver this year. Maybe he takes a step up to be a 1,400, 1,500-yard, 12, 13-touchdown receiver next year, and he does take that full Nico Collins type of trajectory. If that's the case, then you're looking at Jacksonville with Ben Johnson potentially being a top 5 to 8 level offense in the league, and that might even be a cautious spot on that.
Yeah, well, because, they have Kirk, Gabe Davis as ancillary receivers. They have Evan Ingram as a good tight end who can command targets. I think the one thing I'd be worried about from a Hunter standpoint is if he were to go to Jacksonville, I think his rookie season would be, kid, let's learn corner before we learn wide receiver. Yeah. And you're going to play less on offense than you're going to play in your second season because then Kirk may be jettisoned off the team. Gabe Davis maybe cut or something like that. That would be my one worry is that if he does go to Jacksonville, he might just play mostly defense.
For sure. So we do see a couple questions also. Shout out Caleb. Where do you think the 101 will end up in startup value? We were pointing it earlier, but right around where Bijan went. So let's just say Puka, Neighbors, Collins, and then you sub down, in my opinion, Stroud, Nix. Around that, like I would say mid-second round feels like the sweet spot for him. And if somebody wanted to get aggressive and take him at like 14th overall, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair value for the 101. I did see a report today just because somebody mentioned here Ben Johnson to the Raiders, and you talked about Ben Johnson to Jacksonville as well. There was a report today. It was from like 1,000 follower Twitter account, so let's just keep this with a grain of salt. But it does kind of add up as far as like what would make sense. Apparently, Ben Johnson wants to go to Jacksonville, but he wants Balky fired, and Cohen has been offered the Jags job as well. But he is indifferent or 50-50 on if he needs Balky fired for it. So I think that's interesting. First of all, I don't want that to happen because obviously I don't want to lose Cohen. And I do think there's a hush-hush whisper agreement that if Jacksonville offers you this job, we will fire Todd Bowles to keep you. I listened to the Pewter Report podcast this morning. Scott Reynolds does amazing work for the Buccaneers beat, right? He basically full out said that there's no way they would let Cohen go.
Yeah, I mean the guy just talking about coaching candidates because obviously like not just to make this about the Cowboys because obviously they do have a head coaching opening, just more so to point out like other candidates where they'd be looking. Obviously, people are talking about the Deion Sanders news. What I've been hearing too is with Deion Sanders specifically, he would need a buyout to get out of Colorado. Yeah. And realistically, the Cowboys, unless they are for certain that he is their guy, more than likely would just go with a candidate that wouldn't cost money. The one that's been getting some buzz, like out of the good type of candidates that we've been hearing about, is I believe Joe Brady right now is third in odds to become the Cowboys head coach.
Brady's got odds for the Raiders job and for the Jets job as well.
Yeah.
Like people,
I think that would be a home run.
Yeah. Like, so I made a little predictions thing because I just thought it was interesting. Let me know what you guys and what the chat thinks about this.
Good.
I was curious. I was like, okay, well, let's see what's interesting here. So I went Mike McCarthy to the Bears because I think they kind of need like an adult in the room who has experience based on the culture that they have there.
I think that's the biggest lock of the cycle. I think Mike McCarthy will end up being the Bears head coach. He has familiarity in the division. He's been in cold weather situations before, like we saw in Green Bay. So he's used to the Chicago weather, and they have a young quarterback with a guy that has proven, again, he's not the biggest playoff coach, but he can at least front an offense.
Yeah. I think they also, if you're the Bears, you are scared to like lose your locker room, and having a guy who's been a coach before kind of makes sense. So if it's not McCarthy, I do think it will be a retread coach of some kind who's been a coach already. Like throwing Ben Johnson into that situation would be great schematically, but Ben Johnson's never been a head coach. And apparently he's this like mad scientist who like locks himself in his office and just draws up plays. It's like, that's not like really, you kind of need like a Vrabel-y figure to your locker room if you're going to get a team out of a bad culture.
Yeah, the way I describe Ben Johnson, obviously Ben Johnson was more proven than when JJ Redick was coming up in the NBA, but like they're both just so addicted to the game. Like they'll lock themselves in dark rooms, plotting out plays, plotting out schemes. Like I know it's a different sport, but JJ Redick and Ben Johnson have a lot of parallels in terms of their demeanor. Yeah,
these are my other predictions here. Brian Flores goes to the Jets. I think this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's like, he's the raw guy. He's not going to take shit from anybody. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick basically came out and said he was like a terrible coach by the end of things in Miami. So
it's his personality is what Fitzpatrick was saying. Like he was,
maybe he's learned from that. Maybe he's learned how O'Connell operates the locker room and that kind of thing. Ben Johnson, I do think ultimately will go to Jacksonville, and I do think ultimately Balky will be fired. I think that's what's going to end up happening because I don't think they're that stupid. And I think Shad Khan's going to be like, we can't lose this guy. Like we'll just fire Balky and we'll go with this dude. Unfortunately, Danny, I think you guys are going to hire Deion Sanders. I don't know. Maybe you want that. I'm not sure, but
I mean, like I'd be okay with it. I'd be okay with it from a culture standpoint. I do have a hard time seeing it actually come to fruition. Because we've seen already recruits commit to Colorado this cycle with the thesis that Deion Sanders will be their coach. Deion Sanders, again, he did say when Jerry called him, he has a lot to think about, but he also said that I'm committing to the guys in Boulder, which again, it could very well just be coach speak. You don't want to like say to your guys in Colorado, I'm seriously contemplating this job. You more so want to play it coy in a press conference situation. So I understand that. Yeah. I mean, like it could very well happen, and I'd be perfectly fine with it. I do want an offensive minded head coach personally, but at the same time, it's like, you can't deny that he's instilled a culture in Colorado that got them from a laughing stock to a team that was actually respectable and on the cusp of a potential playoff berth. So, I mean, I can't hate that regard. I do think it would be more of a publicity move rather than a move that just makes pure sense from an X's and O standpoint. But who knows, man? Who knows? Yeah, I think I've heard a million times that Glenn is going to New Orleans. Like I've heard people say he played there.
Saints wants Aaron Glenn. He wants to be here. I think this is probably the biggest lock of all of these. I know he's probably a popular candidate for you guys. He's a popular candidate for the Jets as well. I've heard are interested in Aaron Glenn because he played for the Jets and that kind of thing. But Aaron Glenn to the Saints just feels exactly like, kind of like the Dan Quinn to the Commanders hire of the cycle.
And what happens if Dak, if Deion is hired? Dak is the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys because he has $104 million in dead cap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. First of all, if Dallas is stupid enough to hire Deion Sanders and let him go do whatever he wants to go get his son to play quarterback, like you don't deserve to make the playoffs
Agreed.
anytime soon.
You're acting like I disagree, dude. When you got your quarterback in town, build around him. You got the 12th overall pick. Dude, like there's going to be, even if you have to reach down the board because let's just say Burden and Genty are off the board. If you told me we drafted a Emeka Egbuka at 12, I'd be perfectly content with it. I'd be perfectly content.
It would, for the chaos purposes though, it would be fucking mental if the Cowboys like trade Dak to the Titans for the first overall pick and they give him the 12th pick back or something like that or whatever the trade package ended up being, just so Deion could have Shedeur as his quarterback. It would be pretty crazy. And then I think the Raiders,
no actual sense. It's more fan fiction than anything.
It is total fan fiction. Also, Raiders hiring Pete Carroll because his name has come up a bunch of times. I thought that was kind of an interesting one too, because I was like, who the hell are the Raiders going to hire? And
I could totally see the Saints going that way too if they don't go Glenn.
The Raiders one, the one that I'm scared of is that they're the ones who hire Cohen, because here's why. Tom Brady is the part owner there. He's, by all accounts, the reason that Telesco and Antonio Pierce were fired. Tom Brady also is going to take John Spytek from us, it looks like. John Spytek was his teammate at Michigan, knows him very well, assistant general manager to Jason Light in Tampa Bay. He's probably going to be the general manager of Las Vegas, if I had to guess. Like, if I had to guess GM landing spots, I think that one is almost a lock, that John Spytek is going to be the GM of the Raiders. You're already dipping into Tampa for the GM. It's possible that they offer Liam Cohen the head coaching job too.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. How many quarterbacks you guys truly think go in the first round? Think it's much better than 2022 was, but quarterback class feels weak to have a bunch of top 12. Yeah, like my bet's going to be 2. It depends what the line is at. If it's at 1.5, I think that's a reasonable line. If it's at 2.5, you're smashing the under. Yeah,
I think the books should probably, like, honestly just put it 2.0, just higher or lower, and there's gonna be a bunch of pushes.
I mean, if anything, they'll probably just go with 1.5, right?
If they go with 1.5, I think I would probably be inclined to take the higher on that. But if they do go 2.5, I would literally throw a mortgage on the lower.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it as well. Unless the NFL has really convinced themselves of Jackson Dart, which we just talked about, we don't really think is going to be the case from where the NFL kind of stands. If Jalen Milroe is a first round pick after what he looked like against Michigan, fire whatever fucking GM makes that pick. He shouldn't be a top 100 pick based off that game alone. The weird thing
about all three of these quarterbacks, Dart, Milroe, and Ewers, is that I could see one of them, probably not more than one of them having a great Senior Bowl or a great draft cycle, a great combine, great interviews, that kind of stuff. The shit that gets quarterback prospects who probably shouldn't go in the first round drafted in the first round to begin with. Who's the guy of those three quarterbacks that does it? If one of them, I told you I have a crystal ball, I know one of them goes first round in April. Who's the guy that did it?
This is disgusting because he shouldn't be it. And I mean, none of these three realistically should, but I think the NFL would find their way to take Quinn Ewers as the one.
You think it would be Ewers? Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple of reasons why that makes sense. Number one, he was very highly decorated high school recruit. Number two, he was expected to be a highly decorated college prospect coming into the NFL at points in time. Number three, he's played in big games. He plays for a big school, all that kind of stuff. He has tools. He has arm talent, that kind of thing. I think I probably agree with you that he's probably the one that gets elevated if there is one. I think Dart is today the best of the three quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But he played in kind of a Mickey Mouse scheme. Like you said, it's very possible the fantasy community overrates him versus the NFL draft community.
Could you imagine how different we'd be looking at this quarterback class because if you remember correctly, JJ McCarthy didn't commit to or declared for the draft until super late. If JJ McCarthy stayed back at Michigan, they probably would have made a playoff. They probably would have, maybe they don't go on a run, but they would have at least made the playoff if they had JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy probably would have built on his numbers from last year. JJ McCarthy would probably be the clear-cut quarterback one in this class. And if we were looking at Shedeur and Cam as being quarterbacks 2 and 3, we'd be talking about this class in a way different light.
We would be, yeah. I think also Loveland would be a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he had a great season anyways, but with McCarthy at quarterback, his numbers in a vacuum would look
It was insane this year, dude. Michigan, I believe, out of 128 FBS teams, had the 123rd ranked offense. I think that was the number.
Yeah, well, and I remember I looked at Loveland's season. I was like, oh, he only had like 670 yards or something. I'm like, dude,
His
Michigan
share
offense
was
passed for like 1,800 yards or something like that.
That's what I'm saying. It's like people are going to just look at Loveland's stats and think, oh, yeah, no, Loveland overrated this and that. It's like, dude, Loveland is a fucking baller. If he had any type of quarterback situation this year, again, like you can argue Warren over him. Sure, Warren had a great year in his own right, high PFF grade, high receiving total. I was actually talking about it, funny enough, with Snuga in the DMs, but like I think they are the clear cut 1 and 2 in this class. If you view Warren as a fringe, top 15 level pick, Loveland's got to be like a top 25 pick, in my opinion. And I do think that's where they end up seeing their names called, because I think realistically with Warren, he shouldn't leave the 10 to 15 area of the draft. Maybe the Colts at like 14 or 15, wherever they pick, make a ton of sense. Then you're looking at with Loveland, the Chargers, the Broncos, if we want to throw another team out there, I mean, like the Colts pick earlier on, I would assume, like, let's just say they go Warren with their pick. There's just like 3 or 4 teams in that 20 to 25 area that I think could very well
Texans also could be one of those teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, we're going to sign out of here because I do have I have an appointment to get to at 1:15. I would like to do another draft, obviously, but can't do that yet. A couple people asking for like picks this week. We'll have you guys covered with, divisional round picks. I, of course, will be present for Buffalo Bills and Baltimore Ravens. I am fired up, dude. It's supposed to be cold as shit, so I need to bundle up, but I'm Canadian for a reason. So
yeah,
I am so excited for that game. And I think this unbiasedly, this might be the best game all season.
Yeah, I'm if I knew you guys were going, I would have saved it a week. But at least
it was an impulse buy. We were in Discord watching the Washington Commanders and Buccaneers game, and I have 2 Bills fans that I'm close friends with, and they're both like, "Should we go to this game?" And I was like, "Let's take a look at the tickets," and we just bought them. And now there's 4 of us going. So very, very excited for this game on Sunday. But we will have you covered with like pick'ems and all that kind of stuff, probably Friday, Saturday, and so on and so forth. But yeah, very, very excited. And we're also we're starting to talk behind the scenes too about a couple other things. Number one, me and Danny are trying to figure out potentially ways to go to the NFL scouting combine. And number 2, maybe the draft as well, because the draft is actually in Detroit, which is a 2-3 hour drive from where we are right now. So this venue specifically is a very easy one for us to travel to. So those 2 things we would ideally love to go to, but we'll have to kind of wait and see how everything shakes out.
Yep.
And I talked about it already, but about a month from now, we're going to have 25, 30 prospects written up, graded, all that stuff in the Rookie Draft Guide 1.0. We'll also have prospect databases. I'm almost finished the running back one. I just started it this morning. I'm almost done it. Wide receiver database, I'll probably be done later this week. Quarterback, tight end databases, I'll probably be done later this week. Those will be on the site very soon. And of course, I will be updating the prospect model once the college football playoff final is over and inputting all the prospects into the 2025 class and put them in through the prospect model, spit out some grades, pre-testing, obviously, because we'll need that kind of stuff, pre-draft capital, obviously, as well. But very, very excited for this rookie cycle. And obviously, if you guys want all of that stuff that I just mentioned, flockfantasy.com is the best way to get it. Use the promo code FSE for 7 days for free, 6 months for free, 30% off. And of course, we have something. Should we show a sneak peek of the bonus, or should we wait?
Dude, 286 people waited an hour and 17 minutes watching us go through a startup mock. The least we could do is show them a little sneak peek.
Let's show them a sneak peek. I'm just going to show the cover, not the whole thing.
Okay.
But this will be very soon the incentive to get you guys to sign up annually using our code. So obviously you'll get a team review if you sign up annually. You get a voucher for it. You could sign up on the site with code FSE, and you can submit your team for review using our My Teams feature. Either Danny or I, we kind of just go back and forth and rotate which ones we do. You can submit your team and we'll break down everything that you need to know. But now, in addition to that, we'll send you a free one of these, a buy, sell, hold report, where we evaluate your team quickly, say what kind of team you are, and based on that evaluation, house money team, contending team, rebuilding team, we'll give you guys 5 buys, 5 sells, 5 holds, not only just baseline guys that we're generally buying, guys that we're generally selling. No, specific to your team, the type of team that you have. And also, because in our My Teams feature, we can see your entire league, we would give you trade offers and guys that would be incentivized to sell or buy players that you're selling off of your team. So going to be very extensive. That will be you'll get a free voucher for that when you sign up annually. You'll also be able to purchase them a la carte if you do want to purchase more of them, or you have multiple teams that you want broken down, but very excited for that.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I mean, we always talk about evaluating your league market when you send out offers. That's exactly what we will be doing. Like you said, with the My Teams feature, we can kind of see, is this team maybe one that is on the brink of potentially tearing it down? Maybe you're a team that's in a house money situation, you want to buy a veteran. We could talk about the specific deals that you could potentially offer to this team that would entice them to get rid of that asset. And like Corey said, 5 buys, 5 holds, 5 sells. We'll have you fully covered. And again, we wanted to give you guys another incentive to signing up with our code. And I think this is the best way to be able to do so.
Yeah, and like I said, like it's one thing for us to be like, oh, you have Keenan Allen on your team, sell him. It's like, okay, well, who should you sell him to, and what should you get for him? That's kind of, we're digging deeper than just sell Keenan Allen off your team. You're a rebuilder, because that's obviously baseline level advice you could get anywhere. Anybody who knows anything about fantasy tells you that if you're trying to rebuild something, you should sell your old players. So that's what we're doing over on the site. Again, those will be available very soon, probably within the next couple of weeks, as an annual subscription bonus and also an a la carte purchase. Probably by the end of January, we'll have those going. So if that interests you guys, definitely check out flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE for all that good stuff. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.